No, you go ahead. We're live.
Oh, hey, we're live. My name is Ali Rizvi. This is I guess, a bonus episode of Secular Jihadists for Muslim Enlightenment. And this is just one of those things where um, this is part of the one of our patron packages. If you come and you sign up at secularjihadist.com and you're a supporter, what we do is here we have these sessions where you can ask questions and we actually address your questions. So Armin and I are going to basically just sit here and
Well,
talk to some of the issues that have been happening, discuss some of the contents of the podcast that we've been doing, and mainly really focus on the questions that you have for us. So, welcome. And do I have to introduce us for this?
no, no. People know us. I mean, people that don't know us don't care. People that know us already know us.
I must apologize for my camera thing. Actually, you know what? No, I just look a little darker. That's all. I'm a dark skinned guy anyway.
Yeah.
Like, what do I want to
All
do?
right. So
Yeah.
people that don't know us, we're just a bunch of ex-Muslims that talk about Islam, religion, atheism, secularism, that kind of stuff, right?
Enlightenment, free thought,
Yeah.
science,
Yeah. Yeah.
all that fun
Um,
stuff.
so first, hi guys. So I'm seeing some people on the live chat already. Please come in the live chat. I have this right in front of me. So Ali, also make sure you have the live chat next to you somewhere so that you can see what people are talking about.
Yeah.
Hey folks, hi Jen. Okay, cool. So we had first we have to go through the questions that our patrons asked. But then we go after, we'll see. um Okay, let's do Obaid's question, right?
Yeah, Ubaid. So let's start with Ubaid's question
Okay.
because that was my favorite question this time.
Okay. All right. Can
The
you?
first
I
one.
didn't see that question. Can you explain it first?
I can't explain it at all, but I can read it.
Okay.
The question is: would you rather fight one horse-sized duck, or 50 duck-sized horses? So this is Ubaid's question. You asked
What?
me to explain it. I don't know how to explain it. I have absolutely no explanation for it. So Armin, I'm going to let you take this one. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 50 duck-sized horses?
Obviously, 50 duck-sized horses. None of them are going to be a threat. Their numbers are not going to mean anything. I'll kick them one by one.
Do you think so? Really?
Yeah, of course. They don't know how to cooperate. They don't know how to team up. They don't
I don't
even have.
know. I've heard
They don't
about
have.
this.
No, they work based on instincts. They don't know how to plan. Their numbers is not going to give them advantage. So
This
obviously,
is, I guess, there's a similar question, but would you rather be attacked by like one really, really strong man,
man is
um,
different.
or
Man can.
or like 50 11-year-olds?
Oh
And 50 11-year-olds can totally.
no,
And that's a,
they're idiots. 50 11-year-olds. They're idiots. They don't know how to team up.
so you think they'd be kind of like zombies? Because the reason I never got into zombie shows is because they're just useless zombies, and they come in, they don't have any strategy, they don't have anything. All you got to do is just destroy them. So there was nothing exciting about
Kids think a fat man can fit through a chimney and bring toys to all the kids around the
Armin.
world in one day.
Armin.
I don't take them seriously.
Horizontally challenged, not fat. We don't say fat on this. We say
Horizontally challenge.
horizontally or laterally challenged. You can say
All
laterally.
right.
So anyway, Armin, sorry, not Armin. What's his name? Obaid. Obaid, I love you. You know we love you, but I mean, sorry, we don't have a clear answer for your question. Well, Armin does. I don't.
Yeah,
So
we don't. You don't have a clear. I had a very clear answer.
yeah, so I told you that we were going to make this question a priority,
All right.
and
Let's go.
I'm
All
glad to
right.
say that we have.
Okay. So
Sorry,
what? All right. So let's go to some another
some of the
question.
non-serious questions. Let's go to the
Non-serious
non.
question. All right. So Steva, he was wondering. Oh, he or she actually. I don't know. How do I think she or he is wondering why is it okay if we, because I'm just gonna go with she. I'm not gonna say she or he every time. She's wondering. I think she's frustrated with how so many people don't give a shit. Like there are some people that are on your side, some people that are on other people's side, some people disagree with us, some people agree with us, and we're like, a lot of us are challenging each other on Twitter, on Facebook. But her question is it okay, is how could so many people just ignore the destructive force of religion and other bad ideas and not even care? Like most people, if you ask them what they believe in or what they think about this, I'm actually adding to her question, by the way.
Mhm.
They're not going to say, I think this or I think that, or I agree with this or I disagree with that. They're just like, I don't know. I didn't never thought about it. Right.
Mhm.
And it seems like the most common point of view is apathy. Right.
Yeah.
And how do we deal with it? Like when it comes with opinions that we disagree with, we know how to deal with it. We just challenge them. Right. But how do you even deal with people that don't even give a shit?
That's a. So I have an analog for that. Sorry. What was the name of this?
Siva Bala.
How do you spell it?
Siva, first name.
So
B.
yeah. So first name's fine. So to Siva, there is an example actually of this is, I guess, something that's human nature, and I know I'm 42 years old, so this is something that used to frustrate me a lot more when I was younger than it does now, because repeatedly I've seen take like this whole Trump election. There were a lot of people I knew um, who were very apathetic about politics. They didn't really care. They're like, okay, whatever. Especially young people, like, oh, we don't care who the president is. It's all, just a corrupt corporatocracy that's not going to affect us. And then suddenly this election happened and everybody is animated. Suddenly everyone is now talking about it because it lit a fire up under their ass. So I think, through history, the course of history, sometimes you have these cycles where I'm not a fan of the whole history repeats itself thing, which I don't believe, but you
It
do have
rhymes.
these.
It rhymes. It doesn't. Is that what they say? It doesn't repeat itself. It's just
It rhymes.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. But there's, you have these cycles where people become complacent, and then something happens, and then they realize that they should have been more animated, and then things settle down, and they become more complacent. And I think that's just human nature. I mean, most people I've seen, I mean, especially here in the West, they're taking their kids to school, they're watching movies on weekends, they're going out to parks. I mean, this stuff doesn't affect them on a day-to-day basis. And I have to say, when I get off social media, I'm going to spend time with my wife and my baby, and we're just doing things. I mean, this stuff is the furthest thing from my mind, and it sometimes I have to remind myself that when I was growing up in Riyadh, I made a promise to myself. When I was growing up in Pakistan, I made a promise to myself that all the stuff that I can't say here, I'm going to make sure when I'm in a place where I can say it, I'm gonna say it, because there are people who were like me still there, and I, I used to feel a frustration that nobody's talking about it. So I have to deliberately and consciously prod myself. That sounds dirty, but to remind myself that uh, I don't want to get too comfortable. It's a very natural sort of thing
I
to
think that's
do.
actually the main reason when people's lives are not very much they feel like their lives are not affected by these ideas, they don't care. And that's why in countries where people's lives are more affected by, I mean, like in Iran or in Pakistan, where these ideas you could see their influence on your lives more, then people care more, right?
Yeah,
But if your day-to-day lives doesn't really get affected by these ideas, then less people care. And I think, for example, in Canada, people care less because politics really, for example, or these ideas doesn't affect their lives. But in US, for example, they're caring a bit more because as politics become more up and down and people can actually feel how it's affecting their lives, they become more interested in these ideas, right? So I think
mhm.
in places where people care less, it might be like it's a privilege to be able to care less, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because but the thing is that they don't know they get to care less because a whole bunch of other people cared enough to make it passive enough for them to be able to not care about these ideas. Like so they owe it to a whole bunch of people that did care.
Hmm.
I don't know, but I mean, I feel like there's not that level of appreciation. A lot of, one time I told somebody, once somebody asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm an activist." And he said, "I'm a very peaceful, passive guy. I'm a pacifist, right?" And I'm like, you get you like
Yeah.
as if like that was a comeback to me, right? As if that was a better. And I was like,
Oh,
you
there are pacifist activists, right?
I know,
So
but he was saying it as if that was like you're like that, and I'm not. I'm mellow, and I'm like, you get to be like that because of a whole bunch of activists that sacrificed so much
right,
to
and
be
yeah,
for you to be you owe this to activists. You
right.
Every sense of peace, every sense of calm, every sense of security, and every sense of freedom that you're enjoying today is because somebody at some point gave enough shit to to sacrifice their security, their peace, their sense of safety, their lives for you to be able to feel that today.
Yeah,
So
that's
so
right.
even if you're one of those people that are not involved in discussing ideas or in politics or in the influence of these discussions eventually on your life, at least even if you don't are not passionate about it, I'm hoping that at least you could appreciate it. You could
Yeah,
appreciate. Yeah.
that's actually a really good point, and I'll tell you one last really quick anecdote before we move on that illustrates exactly what you said. That even if you're not involved, appreciate. And that's when I was in Buffalo, I had a cleaning lady used to come once a week and sort of just because I just can't clean anything. I'm useless. So anyway, so she disappeared for a few months, and then she finally showed up again. And then so she's cleaning, and I was talking to my mom. My mom was at the time. My mom is a specialist in education, and during retirement, she's been doing projects in third world countries. So she was in Pakistan at this time in some of the rural areas, working with the Kashmir Education Foundation, all these things, and she was working on sort of trying to de-Talibanize and secularize some of the educational institutions and schools in the rural areas. So I had a conversation with her for a little while. The lady was listening. She's this totally white, blonde American, and after I finished talking to her, she came up and she asked me. She's like, "Oh, that was interesting. What does your mom do?" And I told her what my mom does and what she's doing over in rural schools in Pakistan and so on. And then she goes, "So the Taliban?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like they're the bad guys, right? And that's when I realized she had told me she had registered to vote. This was the year that Obama was running against McCain. It was 2008, and the election was just a few months away. And she was going to vote, and this was just a regular person, reasonable intelligence, who hadn't figured out yet whether the Taliban were the good guys or the bad
Oh,
guys.
oh dear.
So we have to remember now what most people like. We're all plugged into Twitter and Politico and reading all the latest stuff that's going on. But when you look at the election turnout, when you look at how much people are involved in civic duty, it's so little. I mean, then think about religion, the religious issues that is even more sort of distant to them, in a way. So
Right.
it's I think that's probably why.
I mean, and I can't, you can't be judge people like that because I want, a lot of times I see in the comments on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter when somebody makes a stupid comment about, sometimes people are like, just go pick up a fucking science book or educate yourself. And I don't know if I told you this, but one time I was in the Philippines. I was in a taxi, and the guy started talking about the Pope and stuff, and we got into religion, and he found that I'm an atheist, and he said something like, "Oh, how could we come from monkeys and stuff?" And I didn't, I argue so much these things with a lot of people, and I couldn't believe that I actually met such a stupid argument and actually in real life. It's like, oh, this is like Twitter in real life, and it was like, I just in my head I thought like, oh God, just go read fucking science book or something. Like, come on. And then I thought to myself, Armin, really? You want this guy to stop driving a taxi, providing for his family, go pick up a biology book and start reading about evolution? Why? Why would he do
Yeah.
that?
Not knowledge. I mean, the acquisition, the ability to have to acquire knowledge is actually, it's a luxury, and you see this in, again, places where I grew up in third world countries. I mean, you have somebody who is who's a cop, for instance. They're getting the equivalent of like $50 or $60 a month, and they're supporting 5 kids and their wife and his parents and her parents, and so they're really concerned about where the next meal is coming from. They're not that concerned about some of these more existential questions about the meaning of life and so on. They just, if they have the answers coming from somewhere, like, oh, God did it, just go pray. That they feel like, okay, that's it. I don't have to think about this too much.
Yeah, and I mean, even the idea of caring about these things, the fact that you care, the fact that you're curious, you got lucky. Maybe your parents cared about education. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you had the genes that made you curious. Maybe you had the luxury of time and education, or you were in an environment where people around you care about this kind of stuff. You can't just judge people for not caring about these. This is just how it is. You can't just expect this from everybody. We have to try to figure out how to make this world work for everybody, not just the intellectuals, right?
Right.
Anyways, there are more questions. Well, actually,
So
we're getting more questions than we are. So
should I read this, the next one that you just posted here?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is from Jim Kingen. Oh, so no, Jim King, and then the first word is N, and it deleted the space.
Yeah, when I copy and paste it, it just doesn't put the space there. That's why.
Oh man. Okay. So the first question that he asks is, in the episode with the One of Us guy. So One of Us, he's talking about the Netflix documentary One of Us that profiled, that sort of featured 3 Hasidic Jews ex-Hasidic Jews who had left the Hasidic Jewish community. And and we had Ari Hershkowitz, one of them, on the podcast for a really, really good episode, I think 2 episodes ago. So in the episodes with the One of Us guy, he said he still goes to shul, but a non-religious one. Is there a Muslim mosque-slash place that does provide a sense of community and culture without the God part? And then he also adds the question above, I'm not talking about ex-Muslim events where I hear it's mostly people who are more interested in exhibiting rebellious things like eating pork and such. So is there a place like that? Not for ex-Muslims, but for Muslims. There didn't used to be. The closest thing I can think of here in Toronto is, and I'm going to give a shout out to this guy because I like him a lot. His name is El Farouk Kaki. He's a lawyer in Toronto, and he's also an activist. He's an LGBT activist. He's an LGBT Muslim. He's a believing Muslim, liberal, pro-secular Muslim. And I think he's involved with a few other people in a center called Al Noor Cultural Center. And this is a place where, I mean, they still have a sense of God, but it's co-ed, pretty much. Men and women sit together. They work together. They do inter-religious marriages. They do all kinds of things, all kinds of like pro-secular things. There's also another group called Muslims for Progressive Values that's very open to non-believing Muslims, even though they still do retain the whole God element. So
non-believing Muslim, that makes no sense. What does that mean?
Sorry, non-believing people from the Muslim families and Muslim backgrounds who are non-believers. So they do accept them, and they were actually, unfortunately,
so ex-Muslim deists, ex-Muslim deist.
No. Most of them actually, they're sort of like Majid Nawaz type Muslims, or what Tanya Joya called Ramadan Muslims, which I loved that.
All right, but let's be clear: being a Muslim is not based on practice; it's based on belief, right? Like, it's not certain actions that makes you a Muslim. It's certain. By the way, some patrons told us we're getting into definitions too much, so I'm gonna just leave it at that. Just leave that action. You could be the worst possible Muslim, but you're still a Muslim. It could be like, as long as you believe certain things, you're a Muslim. you're still going to go to hell. We were told from as children that most Muslims are going to go to hell. That means that not following Islam doesn't make you not a Muslim. It just makes you a very bad Muslim,
Mhm.
right? It's
Yeah, and I think that, as far as that, that's a correct definition of what a Muslim is. A Muslim is someone who believes in Islam. Islam is a religion that's codified in the Quran. So, depending on how far you want to go, either most Muslims are not Muslims, or just, I don't know. But I think what Jim King is talking about over here is people, um, a Muslim mosque place that's really Muslim in the identity sort of definition. People identify as Muslims because their parents are Muslims, or they're part of a Muslim community, as a minority in the country. So they do that, and we may agree or disagree on whether they're really Muslim in the linguistic sense of the definition, but uh, that is what they call themselves, and so. Yeah. So those are some of the centers. I know that there are completely secular church-like institutions, like West Hill United in Toronto, and Oasis is another one, and they have services on Sunday, like Sunday assembly type services that are. I mean, these are Christian derived, but I don't know of anything that's perfectly analogous to that for um,
see,
non-Muslim or ex-Muslim believers, or some sort of Muslim in quotes believers or non-believers.
when it comes to Christianity, if somebody doesn't believe in all of that and thinks it's all bullshit, I can see why somebody might, or an ex Jew might see some things that they used to do kind of fun. I want to keep doing it. I mean, Christmas, or going in church and the buildings are pretty, and I don't know. It's just for fun, not because you think it's valuable or that it means anything. You want to
Mhm.
keep some of the culture. But honestly, with Islam, I can't. And I mean, maybe because I'm an ex-Shia, Shiism is just all about death and crying and black, and
But see, you're not see. So Armin, this is a matter of taste. So for
yeah,
me,
I don't enjoy death.
so one of the things for me that I retain from, and I'm also like from Shia background, is I don't know if you guys call them the same thing, the Naha, the songs that they sing during Muharram, that they beat their chest to, the
Yeah,
self-flagellating,
yeah, yeah,
those melodies.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So some of those melodies and those, I still sing them. I mean, I did it when I was
Yeah,
on
but
the tablet.
but what are they about? It's about constantly being sad about this dude
Yeah,
that
yeah,
died
yeah.
1400 years ago.
I
I
don't
mean,
change
there's
any of the
nothing.
lyrics, but it's just the melody. It's like, you watch Goodfellas. It's about like killing people, and everybody in that movie is a terrible character, but it's entertainment.
Yeah.
So
By the way, a lot of girls go watch these things because they want to look at the boys, beating their chest and stuff. I was told like a lot of girls just go watch these things
that
for
Shia
that.
girls they have a thing for that. They like, because it's a very masculine thing to beat the shit out of yourself and then not get hurt, and especially when they do the blades thing. When I
We don't
almost did
have that.
that.
We didn't have the blade things. When I saw that, I was like, wait, what? She is like, we don't have. I mean, I at least not.
We're talking about self-flagellation, by the
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
to
So we
commemorate the death of the
basically the way we hit
prophet's
ourselves,
grandson.
it doesn't even hurt. It just has to make a huge noise the way you hit your chest.
Dude, in Iran, you have those heavy things that you bruise your back with.
No, I use those. I used those before. It doesn't. I mean, you hit it as hard as you want. It doesn't even hurt. It just makes a huge noise, and it feels like, wow, that's so powerful.
So
Like,
you don't have the blades, like when you cut your back with blades and
no,
then you
when
bleed?
I mean, I saw that. I never saw those until I became an ex-Muslim. Those shits are freaky.
Yeah, I know they do. They put razor blades in their fingers and they do it with their scalp.
No, we
They do
Sufis.
a sword, the kama. They do that sword on their child, on their babies. They
No, we
make a
we
little
used to
cut.
see we used to see Sufis do that, not Shias,
Yeah. Well, you know what?
right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh,
But
Christians do that in Southeast Asia. Like they walk on hot
but
coals
I'm
and they
not
do
saying
all that.
I'm not saying they don't do that. I'm pretty sure maybe in Iran, if you go maybe to some other cities or some outside the town, you will see that maybe, right? I never saw that. You never see that maybe in Tehran, in you know, and if you see it, you're gonna be like, whoa, that's fucking crazy. It's crazy.
Well,
Right.
it is. It is pretty crazy.
Yeah, but I'm
It is
just saying
funny.
that it's not maybe if you go to Karbala you'll see that more. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah,
not gonna
yeah,
see that during Ashura in Tehran. Anyways, we're getting very technical, I think. Guys,
yeah.
let us. By the way, let us know if you guys like it for us to get into like these little details, or is that too much detail?
Yeah.
Anyways, so what's the next question?
The next question is, oh, okay. So I have to. Sorry, before we go on to the next question, we have one of our favorite past guests named Muhammad Al Qadra. Muhammad Al Qadra. Is this a real Muhammad Al Qadra? Is it?
Oh, is he here?
No, no. Yeah, he's in there. I see it.
Oh yeah, he's there.
So he's asking, and one thing I shout out, Muhammad Al Qadra is one of my favorite guys. He's
Yes.
super, super inspiring, and I really like him. And he just asked, his question is, "Who's your favorite Jordanian?" Came to say hi, and the answer is,
Obviously.
of course, Muhammad Al
Muhammad
Qadri. You are, and so I'm
I
gonna
think
shout out to him. He's speaking at the American Atheist Convention in Oklahoma.
yes.
That's coming up. That Hugh Laurie is going to be the keynote speaker at.
We
So
actually brought it up in one of our episodes with what's his name?
the
Uh,
next episode that's coming out, David Silverman.
Silverman. We actually mentioned that. We mentioned that we thanked David Silverman for inviting an
Muhammad.
ex-Muslim for inviting Muhammad, because we think like these events don't get enough ex-Muslims. So we're very happy that Muhammad. By the way, did Muhammad ask who's your favorite Jordanian just so that we say that he's our favorite Jordanian? Did he just?
He's it's okay. He's earned that right. So,
all right.
I was Muhammad. I'm so glad you came on. I was going to ask Hugh Laurie to tell you I said hi instead of the other way around, but now that I've seen you here, I think we're good. But say hi to Hugh Laurie for us. So
Yeah.
anyway, moving on. Uh, Alex Grizzly. The question is: Islamic apology worse in the U.S. or Canada?
I don't know.
So,
I think it's probably worse in Canada, isn't it? I
yeah,
think you were more PC here.
yeah, we're more PC here. I think right now with Justin Trudeau is a lot of the stuff he's doing is and as a lot of people know, and it makes them cringe. I am overall a supporter of Justin Trudeau compared to all the other choices, but honestly, he's becoming really hard to defend with some of the apologism. I'll give you an example. Went into a mosque, said hi to everybody, and then said and hello to all you ladies in the back. Gender segregation. Imagine if that was a segregated racial mosque. He said, "Oh yeah, and hello to all you black people in the back." It's only in a mosque or religion that religious institution that people can do that. And in all honesty, like Obama or even Bush would have gone and said the same thing. So I think that there is a lot of it. I think here in Canada is a reaction to Trump as well. People have become very sort
Yeah,
of
people are really like we're different from the United
they're like, we
States.
don't want to. They're now just like in the women's march. Now you have more sort of non-Muslim women wearing hijab without anybody complaining about cultural appropriation. But they're it's just happening a lot more because I think in reaction because the other side is also a total other extreme. You've got like
Really?
just
We did
yeah
have it. Did we have it? I think we're going to create because Trump is a
no.
reaction to
I,
the. Yeah, go
I'm
on.
saying Trump is the other side as in Trump, not here in
All right,
Canada.
but I'm just saying we might be create. We if Trump was a reaction to PC culture,
Mhm.
what I'm thinking is that are we going to see the same kind of a reaction in Canada?
I don't think so. I think Canada is a so you
Mm.
have to remember one thing about Canada. Canada is all of Canada, and Canada has 10 provinces. The entire country of Canada has fewer people than
Then California,
California
yeah,
alone. Okay,
yeah.
about 3 million fewer
But
people than
people keep
California alone.
using us as a shining example. So
We
even though,
are. We kind of are.
yeah,
When you said that people get really really comfortable with the political situation, they get in Canada is a perfect example of that. Now, why are they so comfortable? They're comfortable because we do really have a good system here. Canada is a capitalist country, but it's got a lot of social regulation. The regulation is different. Like in the US, corporations are very heavily regulated. The corporate tax rate is like 39% or whatever. In Canada, the corporate tax rate is 15%. The corporations are not very well regulated, but the banks are super regulated, which is why we survived the 2008. Anyway, I don't want to get into the details of this, but
right, yeah.
but we have we have a different sort of kind of regulation with it, but it's a very good hybrid of a sort of a capitalist society that has very, very strong social, safety nets and security nets. So I think that people generally are happy here, and that's shown in survey after survey. Standard of living is generally very good here, and there is a sense of protecting minorities. And when you have, and there is a sort of one way Canada defines itself, unfortunately, is by that we are the not U.S. country.
Yeah, but
Like,
so some people are afraid that this is going to change. This whole thing is going to change by this, being so friendly to Islamic culture and being so accepting. Recently, didn't they remove the anti-FGM message in the Canadian citizenship
yeah,
test?
and that was
So
something that
basically, yeah, go
these
on.
guys were doing before too. No, I mean, yeah, that's something that they were
So
kind of doing
basically, in
before
the
too.
Canadian citizenship test, where it said, correct me if I'm wrong, where the part that it says that FGM is a bad and it's not our culture here, they removed that to appease the sensibilities. So basically, um, not offending people that was more important to them than actually cutting clitorises off. That was
Little
they
girls, yeah,
of little girls. They took people's feeling as a
hmm,
priority by removing that, right?
yeah,
And wasn't it recently? And I don't know if this is out of context or if he meant something else. When people say, "Why are you bringing back ISIS?" Um, they asked
yep,
Trudeau, "Why are you bringing back ISIS members to Canada without going to jail? They're just free when they come back." And in response, he started talking about when Italian immigrants were coming to
yep,
Canada,
yeah.
people were against them as well. So he
Yeah,
basically,
and
so he
before that,
made
that
this
was an
is
edited clip, and before that, he just talked about general immigration. He answered the question
as
about
if
Syrian refugees, like as if
so
he lumped them all in with the
ISIS.
ISIS
So
supporters.
this is something that is beyond social justice warrior response, right? Because he's not saying we should be accepting of Muslims, right? This is your standard. He went way past that. Like I think even some social justice warriors would be looking at that are like, what the fuck?
Mm.
Because he was saying we should be accepting not of just Muslim, but of fucking ISIS. He didn't compare Muslims with Italian immigrants. He compared
But
ISIS
you know what's more
with
dangerous about
Italian
this? What's
immigrants. Yeah.
even more dangerous about it is that if he's speaking the same way about ISIS than he is about Muslim immigrants in general, like for please go ahead, compare Muslim immigrants to Italian immigrants. That is a perfectly valid comparison. But comparing returning ISIS supporters to Italian immigrants and to what he's doing is he's conflating ISIS with Muslims. That is one of the worst things with the regular Canadian Muslims, which they also find really insulting. So it's a
Yeah, I think Muslims would have been like, okay, that's not the kind of defense we
they did
want.
a lot of Muslims. I mean,
Responded?
my
Okay, good.
yeah, no, no. My family, a lot of people in the Muslim community here in Canada are very upset at the $10.5 million payout to Omar Khadr. Omar Khadr is he comes from a pretty much a
Wasn't he a child though? I don't know how I feel about that. Wasn't he a child when he did
he,
that?
he was a child when he did that. He came back.
Just to be clear, we're talking about a guy that committed an act of terror, and he was in prison and he was mistreated. So the government of Canada paid him a shitload of money for mistreating him. Is that correct?
$10.5 million, ten
So a
point
lot
three
of
million
people are
dollars.
like, why are we paying off terrorists as an apology when they're doing this, all this shit to
Yeah,
us? But I don't know how I feel about this. We're talking about a kid when he
I know.
started.
So I agree with you that part. I think he was mistreated. He was a kid. I don't know how much he's responsible, but I still think a $10.5 million payout. And you got to remember, his family is actually sort of his older sister. Um, is she's had sort of four marriages. Her second marriage was actually attended in person by Osama bin Laden. I mean, they're sort of very
Really?
connected to Al Qaeda and all that in
Yeah.
generally. So I think
Oh.
that people, it's a much deeper story that I won't get into right now. But yeah, I think there is definitely a lot of apologetics, Islamic apologetics in Canada. But you also have to remember with Canada, we haven't had and just really quick closing point. Alishba had talked about this in the episode that we did with her. Um, when we had to go to the Canadian authorities to report some death threats and so on. And the Canadian, um, I guess the Canadian equivalents of the FBI and their law enforcement are really, really badass.
Yeah,
They
I
tend to,
heard.
you read about foiled terrorist plots every year. Like in the back, they're actually really, really tough. They do that. And on the front, the politicians like, oh yeah, we love everybody. We love the minorities. So they're actually surveilling. They're doing
But they're
all
not
kinds of crazy.
connected, are they? They're like the
I,
intelligence group. They don't really give a shit about
I,
what
I
politicians
don't know.
say.
I mean, you've got Canada supposed to be this huge environmental country. We're all about it. But behind the scenes, the Trudeau himself and all the liberals are supporting the Keystone XL pipeline.
All right, let's go.
So
Let's go to the next question. We're
yeah,
getting
let's
into
do it.
energy policy. So yeah, go.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
The next, oh shit. Okay.
We're getting so many questions. We need to
Oh,
ask
so
this one.
here's one with a really quick answer. I hope. What do you guys think about Assad? This is from
That's
Nim Grace.
that's
Armin, go
easy.
first.
It is a fucking monster,
He's a
right?
fucking monster, and he should be very, very. He should be. He's very lucky. He's very lucky that he's not Jewish, because when if Israel killed that many people, the amount of Muslims that he's killed, then the entire world would be talking about how Israel's doing this horrible stuff. But because he's not Jewish,
Yeah,
because he is
you know,
also
a
supposed
lot
to
of
be
people
Muslim.
think that we should support this guy because he's secular and not very religious. And like, once you start fucking gassing little children, you've moved beyond the red line that we care whether you're fucking religious or not, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Like,
and I gotta say, I do support. I differ with a lot of people who say Obama had an atrocious foreign policy. I think Obama actually understood a lot of those things a lot better than most other people do. So I
really,
liked
when
him.
he drew the red line and Assad
That
passed it and he didn't
that
do anything, that
well,
was
that's what
bad.
I'm getting to. I
Yeah.
except for that, I
Okay,
think that was the most colossal foreign
that
policy
was a big
mistake
fuck up.
that
Yeah.
Obama did, and I think that he really really should
He
have.
turned U.S. drawing red lines into a joke,
Yeah,
right?
he did. So
Oh,
there's a and I think part of the whole Trump backlash situation is in response to that as well. So I think apart from that, I think he had a very good response to most things, but on that was just that actually infuriated me because if you saw the videos of those kids who were being gassed, I mean, chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction, this is stuff that, and especially when they're used on children,
yeah,
and I
and
say this now as a father too,
some
it's
some of his supporters are saying like, "Oh, this is conspiracy. He's not gassing children. U.S. is doing that." That's so much. There's so much bullshit there. I mean, there's so many independent human rights groups. A lot of people keep trust human rights groups with their investigations and stuff until they start saying something against the people that they like and support. All of a sudden, it becomes a huge
Well,
conspiracy.
there's this. You know why the whole Assad conspiracy thing is happening, and this is connected. I got to say one thing, and here's how it connects to the current Republican administration in the U.S. is Trump and his sympathy for Putin. There's no bigger enabler in the world of Assad than Russia and Putin right now.
And
Remember,
Iran, actually.
well, Iran, Russia, and Syria. I mean, they all. It's an axis, right? Now there is, and don't forget that when that red line thing was crossed and Obama didn't do anything,
Mm,
the reason he didn't do anything, he's like, well, we were going to attack, but then Russia has decided to take all of the chemical weapons that Assad has, and to keep an eye on that stuff,
mm.
and that's why they didn't do it. That was their out. And what happened years later, last year, is that he did it again. He gassed children again. Anyway, so Assad is an asshole.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
definitely. Um, yeah, I was gonna say something, but I forgot. So let's go to the next question.
So Chris Atheist, Jim King. I know you have a couple other ones, but I just want to give some of the other people here. So Chris Atheist Power. I like that, Chris Atheist Power. Do you think Islam can be reformed? I know Armin doesn't, so I assume that question's for me.
And yeah, but if we go into that, then this is gonna be a whole reform episode.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And one thing that we actually have to make sure that we time whenever we bring the whole reform thing, because I know it gets like repetitious for a lot of you guys.
Hmm.
I've heard that,
So maybe
but
you just answer, and I'm gonna try to not hold back and not attack your position.
my position's not that much different from yours, Armin.
You.
I
Okay.
am, yeah. So when it comes to this is where Armin and I align. Armin and I align in that we both don't think that Islam, when you define Islam as the doctrine codified in the Quran, the scripture, we don't think that can be reformed because that scripture is supposed to be the word of God, is supposed to be infallible. You can't question it. So all of that stuff about changing the meaning of certain words to mean something else, that it doesn't say beat your wife, it actually means tickle your wife with a feather or whatever. That,
Toothbrush.
yeah, that kind of sort of linguistic acrobatics, I think, is a joke. I think it works on people who are not very knowledgeable about the Quran and are not
People
really much
that
of a
are
problem.
already nice,
Yeah,
and
people already nice, and we don't really need to worry about them anyway. But and two other people, like again in the last episode, Tanya Joya, who's the ex-wife of the ISIS commander, her ex-husband, he knew the linguistics, the classical Arabic inside out. He memorized the very first Arabic grammar books and dictionaries that were ever written in the 8th century, in the 9th century, or the sorry, the 6th and 7th centuries probably, and they know it. So if you go and you give these sort of Reza Aslan excuses to them about how this word actually means this or that, they're going to laugh in your face, and those are the people who we have to worry about. So I don't think that reform has any practicality when it comes to that. I actually think it's harmful.
yeah, it's
When
purposeful. I
right.
agree. It provides
No.
cover for Islam, basically by talking
Excuse me.
about this whole like, oh, Islam, we're trying to end fight dogma, we're trying to fight superstition, and by people kind of suggesting that, hey, maybe it's not that bad, you're basically slowing down the process, right? That's what I think.
Yeah, but where I think we have a slight disagreement, though not a complete disagreement, is that I do think that the way that Muslims think, again, difference between Islam and Muslims. Islam, the ideology codified, the doctrine codified in the Quran, cannot be reformed. Muslims overall are heterogeneous. They're people. They're not just ideas. Most of them are actually, most of them, in my experience, even in religious countries, are breathtakingly uninformed about the religion and the ideology itself. So for them, I think that if we, supposing we take a reform approach of the Quran is not infallible, it's like the Hadith. It was written by Muhammad, but it was divinely inspired. It was channeled through God, but written by Muhammad.
So you're
Like
lying to them.
well, you're actually getting closer to the truth because it wasn't written by God.
No, you're replacing one lie with a different lie.
Yes. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't say that to them. Okay, Armin? Like
Yeah.
because I don't think that I wouldn't say that. But supposing there's somebody who does think that way, and there are people who actually believe that now, right? If people like that go out and say things, I am I'm in favor of supporting them. I think that there are, and I've given this example in the podcast before, that there are people that I know in my extended family who do not want to go where I am, who don't want to take that leap because they have a lot to lose. They have their families, their parents, disownment, political risk, all kinds of stuff to lose. So if they can get their foot in a space where they can hear people like me and hear people like Armin, but
Yeah.
still sort of like keep a foot where the sort of the Majid Nawaz territory. I am actually that kind of reform, a place where all conservative, liberal, ex-Muslims, former Muslims, non-Muslims can come and join together and have dialogues without threat of death or disownment or anything like that. If that kind of space can be created within the Muslim
Yeah, that
community.
kind of space could be created, but that has nothing to do with reforming Islam.
Well, that comes to semantics. So I'm saying that if that is about, it has nothing to do with reforming Islam, but it's about
Yeah.
reforming Muslims. It's about Muslim reform. So that
Reforming Muslim, creating ex-Muslims is also reforming Muslims,
right,
right?
and that's part of it.
People can change, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
people can
yeah.
change. But I'm just saying what you described. I support people examining their views, changing their ideas. I'm all for that. But I'm saying that has nothing to do with reforming Islam. Islam is Islam. Even if people keep switching their views and thinking like maybe it's this, maybe it's that, they are changing.
No,
Islam is not changing.
on that we agree. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think Islam can be reformed, but I do think that Muslim reform is a worthwhile endeavor. But that's kind of what our positions are. And
Right.
anyway, should we move on to?
I just think semantics matter in this case, because if you talk about reforming Islam instead of saying reforming Muslims, you're giving hope for this barbaric, ancient, backward ideology that you're giving it hope. You're saying that this book that tells you how to beat your wife, how to own slaves, how to torture non-believers, this book that tells you that you could pick women up and just rape them because you captured them in war. This book, you're saying there's still some hope for this book. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's something in there valuable. I'm saying fuck that shit. Anything good in there could be taken from other places, much better places that discuss those things in much more advanced ways, that have discussed those things in much more advanced ways for thousands of years before the Bible and the Quran. We don't need a book that says that even slightly endorses any of those values. There is no hope for such a book. There is no hope for such an ideology. Saying we can reform Islam is as idiotic to me as saying we could reform Nazism and we shouldn't give up on Nazism altogether.
So
By the way,
I'm completely pretty much aligned with you when it comes to the book. My contention only is that I think that when people talk about Muslims, it goes like most of these people, they don't know about the book. They don't know anything about the book. All they know is that, my family is Muslim. If I say I'm not a Muslim anymore, then my parents are going to disown me. I won't have a place. That kind of thing, So anyway, we have we agree to disagree on that. But
our first we didn't disagree. We agreed actually everything we said. We agreed right here. But
that's even better.
Yeah, no, it's not better. Disagreements are more fun.
Well, I beg to disagree.
All right, that's good. But look, we got our first super chat by Stephen T. $1.99. Thank you. That's very nice. This is our first.
What's a super chat?
Super chat is when somebody highlights their comment in the live chat by donating to us.
Oh, okay. Well,
this is our first super chat on this channel, and that's very nice. Thank you so much. And
yeah, that's thank you, Stephen T.
So read their comment.
Can you talk about crazy actual Islamic beliefs? Oh my God! We'd have to actually spend a full night on this. So, but in the past, what we did, Stephen, is we have a past episode, and it was with Faisal and Yaz as well, and it was called Silly Scripture, and where we sat there and we found some of our favorite stuff in mostly Islamic scripture, and we talked about it, and I think that we should probably do a sequel for that at some point.
Yeah, we also had an episode on this.
And also I'd just give you a heads up in our the most recent episode that we recorded that's going to be out 2 episodes from now is with Ibrahim Abdullah, who's the Egyptian ex-Muslim atheist, and he's an expert on all the crazy stuff that's in scripture, and some of the stuff that he talked about was pretty funny.
What is your favorite, craziest, either Quran or Hadith verse? Your top.
It's gonna disappoint you, but hold on. So give me a second, and I'm gonna find out exactly what the citation is. Meanwhile, why don't you say yours?
Well, I don't remember exactly which surah and ayah it is, but I know it's about the surah. The ayah itself is not seems disappointing, but the backstory interests me a lot, and that's the verse that comes down, the ayah that comes down, and Quran says that don't that Aisha is innocent. And whoever wants to claim that somebody is guilty of adultery has to bring 4 witnesses, or else they're going to be punished if they can't produce the 4 witnesses, right? The backstory of that is basically what makes it interesting, because it started with Aisha wanting to take a dump, and
the necklace.
Yeah, and then when she came back to the caravan, she noticed her necklace was missing. And she went and get it, and the caravan left. And she was like, "What the fuck?" She was too proud to follow the caravan, so she just sat there. And this guy came and saw that she was sitting there, so he picked her up and caught up with the caravan. And everybody saw this man with Muhammad's favorite wife, on the same camel. So rumors started spreading, and Muhammad and Aisha were not talking to each other because Muhammad was ashamed for a whole long time. And then Ali said, divorce her. this is embarrassing. Abu Bakr was like, what the fuck, you're talking about my daughter, I'm here in the room, I can hear you. But Muhammad,
That's kind of how Sunnis and Shias, that has a big
no,
part to
and
play in
that's
how
why
Sunni and
that's
Shias.
so interesting. This is the divide between Sunni and Shia started because of the story. Basically, because Aisha wanted to go take a dump, and then when she came back, she noticed that her necklace that Muhammad gifted to her was missing, and she went looking for it. And this whole thing is now why Saudi Arabia is bombing Yemen, right?
Well, it's also, yeah, it's I think Ali wanted the Prophet to divorce Aisha at that point, and then
Yeah.
Abu Bakr was. So think of if the Prophet, if Muhammad was Trump, right? Think of Abu Bakr as Steve Bannon, and then think of Ali as Jared Kushner. Okay,
That's
Jared Kushner,
great.
that's
Oh, that's
that was his
fantastic.
son-in-law. So they're both competing for influence. So what happens is that Steve Bannon's daughter is somehow married to Trump. That's kind of what the situation's like. And then then Jared comes up. He's like, you got to divorce her. You got to divorce this kid. And then he actually got a verse. He's miraculously got a revelation the next day where God told him not to to divorce her. So that's now. Here's my thing. I found it. It's Surah 2, verse 138, and it's going to disappoint you because the only reason I like it is because I think it's just funny. It
Right.
sounds funny, and this is the exact verse. We take our color from Allah, and who is better than Allah at coloring? I just love that line. Who is better than Allah at coloring?
I
It's a
just
whole bunch of
imagine God is
kindergartners.
like, imagine like God like having the sun. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do some yellow, maybe some orange, and like,
Of course, it's
and I'm like,
metaphor.
look, like, oh wait, I haven't created any conscious being yet.
No, no, this is clear. This is one of the more obvious verses that is actually metaphorical, that is
Okay,
genuinely metaphorical. Who's better? Because, it's about giving character, but it's just so much funnier when taken literally. Anyway,
right.
thank you, Stephen. Um, let's move on to, I like this moldy pizza. Did you see this? A question from Moldy Pizza?
What is
It says Armin says that anyone should be able to proselytize their religion. How does he reconcile that with the fact that Islamic priests led him to attempt suicide? Hmm.
well, Islamic school teachers, not necessarily imams.
Yeah, but I think he's talking about people who proselytize and who taught the thing. They told you that
Well,
once you're 15, this, and after 15, you're going to get sin.
well,
And
what's the alternative though? To force them to shut up? What would that accomplish? Like how would you in the alternative to not letting people spread their ideas, even bad ideas, is to force them not to.
it's to censor them.
To censor them. And if we do that, first of all, it will grow faster because they love it when you do that, because then they're the victim and you're the oppressor, and religion grows on being the victim. Like that's what they feed, what it feeds on. This is why even Christians in the United States, they still think the victims, because you need to be the victim. You need to be the people that are being wronged. Even if you're still in power, you have to find a way to say no, we're being oppressed.
Yeah.
So so that's one thing. Second of all, if you do silence it, you drive it underground and you don't see it as a problem. You don't notice how fast it's growing. You think like this Nazi alt-right thing in the United States just started right now. No, they were growing for many, these feelings were there. They were growing for many years. They just weren't brave enough to talk about it, but now all of a sudden it's showing itself. But the problem was growing for a very long time. People just didn't see it. So when you ban speech, people don't notice it as a problem that needs to be addressed. People
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
gotta.
But the third thing is that if you give any authority to anybody to silence people, then you don't know who's going to eventually hold that authority. The problem with these Islamic teachers is not that they get to speak. The problem in Iran is that there was no room for anybody to reply, right? So the fact that they get to silence other people That's the problem. The fact that there's no challenge to their views, that's the problem. I mean, obviously, them spreading their ideas is a problem, but I think addressing that problem is uh, is not silencing it is not an effective way of shutting them up. You know, the best way of attacking that bad idea is to ridicule it, debate it, mock it, show how ridiculous it is, show how harmful it is. If you silence it, yeah, I mean, look at fucking Germany, right? They try to ban Holocaust denial, right? Do you think that really helped them? They have an alt-right problem right now in the country that was the most forceful against these kind of ideas, made it illegal. Doing a Nazi salute will get you, arrested, right?
Look at the history of banned books like Lady Chatterley's Lover. You know, the Satanic Verses. Someone I mean, these are literary classics now. So I mean, it doesn't help. Censorship does not help. The censorship is just it makes heroes out of it makes martyrs out of people who don't deserve it often, and sometimes
Right.
people who do deserve it. And the one other thing I want to actually bring up, something that Jay-Z said recently, and Jay-Z, who I'm a big fan of, and his music since a very, very long time, is that, you know, he talked about I don't know that much about sports, but Donald Sterling, you know, the guy who owned I think he was a coach of a basketball team or some sports team, and all these phone calls leaked of him being racist. Um, I had phone calls with his girlfriend. So what they did was he lost his job, and what Jay-Z said was, you know, what we need to do is we need to let these people like this keep their job, and then have a conversation with them, because you know when they lose their jobs, they shut up, and then they go back into the closet, and those ideas still fester, and then they teach them to their kids, and it keeps on growing, and it stays underground. But if you let them function like normal members of society, if they're doing their job okay, and you bring them out in the open, you have a conversation with them, then that's a much better way of countering ideas
Right.
over the long term.
And
So
and if they are afraid of not giving voice to their opinions, then they're never going to hear a challenge. They're going to be like, I must be believing something true that these people are so afraid of.
yeah.
They don't have a good argument against me. That's why they can't, they're silencing me, right?
Uh-huh.
But if you just let them with no fear to just say what they believe in, and somebody reacts to them and points out how ridiculous that view is, they might eventually, I mean, not might, we've seen a lot of times they go out and like change their opinions on that, right? Sometimes they don't even admit that they change their opinions because people have egos. They slowly keep modifying their views until it becomes more reasonable, and they act as if that was always their position. But that's a good, but at least they're changing their views. Anyways, what else do I have? I copied it.
So before there's another question, but before that, I think someone wrote here, and it doesn't say who. So I wanted to tell you this, Armin. I think you pasted it here.
Oh yeah, I forgot to.
Quote from Armin is, "Creating ex-Muslims is reforming Muslims."
Yeah.
A quote from Armin Navabi, which means that he does think reforming Muslims is a good thing because it creates ex-Muslims. I just wanted to bring that up just to prod you a little bit, Armin. But
Thank
anyway.
you. I copied that because so that you read it.
Okay, so moving on, there's a question that this has actually come up a lot for me, so I'm just going to read it out here. Do you like Imam of Peace on Twitter? So they're talking about Imam Tawhidi, who
we had him as a guest. So you go first.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, go back and just find the episode where we talked to him. I had problems with him, and I actually asked him about it on the podcast. I think that, I mean, this is the thing with all of these characters. I mean, you've got people like Milo Yiannopoulos, and you're going to hear there's obviously going to be a few things he's going to say that make sense, but the context behind the things and the motivation behind him saying those things, to me, is suspicious. I kind of feel similarly about Imam of Peace. On the one hand, you know, he's against the violence. You know, he opposes Salafism, opposes Wahhabism, which all of us do. On the other hand, he is a sort of he has you know, the sympathy for people like Pauline Hanson. He described he compared immigrants coming into Australia, Muslim immigrants coming into Australia, as dogs. And then when I asked him about it, he turned on. He's like, "Oh, you don't like dogs? That's an Islamic thing. You know, dogs are so cute." And he tried to dodge it. So, which he's very good at. So I am. He was fun to talk to. I am sure in person he's a nice guy, but I kind of feel like he is. He's a little disingenuous. He's a little bit of a shill for some of these really sort of far right type people. Type the not the good people on the right, but the really sort of sinister people on the right. And he is also actually pretty classic Shia propagandist. So he was educated in Shia Islam, and I'm very familiar with Shia Islam. I actually have a cousin who was trained in Qom and became a cleric in Qom, Iran. And we used to have discussions about this stuff all the time. And what I hear from Imam Tawhidi is when he speaks against Wahhabism, when he speaks against Salafism, this is very, very common for Shia clerics to do. But he will still remain when you really, really get down to scripture and we really get down to the idea of faith, about all of the stuff that I think is the most dangerous thing about Islam, the the actual doctrine. I feel like he's an apologist like everybody else.
Well, I say one positive and one negative, and also some more general negative things about this whole Shia thing. Um, First, the positive thing is that one time I noticed that when we addressed that something that he said was very wrong, he came out and said that maybe I should rethink this. I don't see that often, so that was pretty impressive that somebody actually came out and said that, "Hey, maybe I should rethink this."
Yeah, I
People
agree with that. Yeah.
people saying I'm wrong about something and changing it, that's impressive. Then the negative thing I noticed is that he's kind of he's what he's doing is the opposite of what we do. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we are constantly trying to fight ideas, but we're not against people. We're actually people that a lot of people think very very hateful, the way we talk about Islam and religion. And all
Right.
of a sudden a lot of people think that we are too tolerant or apologists when it comes to talking about Muslims, people, individuals. I mean, I some people were very upset with me. Some even leftist social justice warriors think that I was went way too far when I said a terrorist in a terrorist attack. Um, People usually don't count one victim, and that's usually the bomber or the person that attacked, because everybody that died was a victim, but the person that actually carried out like attack was a victim of this ideology way before everybody else, and at the day of the attack. So I count that person as a victim as well, because he was he or she was a victim of this religious virus.
Mm.
So because these are people at the end of the day, and they are infected by this disease, and even the worst of them, I feel bad for them, right? So, but I think like when I see some people that they accept Islam as this barbaric, hateful ideology, and they keep making excuses about for it, and at this same time they hate Muslims, a lot of Muslims, people that I usually feel bad. I mean, the main reason why we fight Islam is because of the victims of Islam, and the number one victims of Islam are Muslims. So I think being anti-Islam is pro-Muslim. If if you're pro-Muslim, you can't be anything but anti-Islam. And I think these people, some of these people are exactly the opposite. They hate a lot of Muslims, but they make excuses for Islam, which is completely the polar opposite of what we're trying to do here. When it comes to Shia Islam, a lot of people think that they're suggesting that this is a more acceptable version of Islam, which is really weird for somebody like me that came from Iran, that saw Shia Islam as such an evil thing. But I think a lot of non-Iranian Shia Muslims think that Khomeinism is a corrupt version of Shia Islam, and Shia Islam was never supposed to get into government until the Imam Mehdi, the 12 Imam, came back, right? So they say, like, look, this is very secular, right? Look how secular Shia Islam could be when it's actually advocating for religion not to get involved in politics, right? But actually, this is such a great example for why reforming bullshit is such a useless thing to do. Because when the time comes and it needs to get to power, somebody like Khomeini come and be like, "Hey, no, this you all got it wrong." And we actually have to gain power for Imam Mahdi until he comes back as Velayat Faqih. When you are dealing with fucking magic, anything goes. You could just tweak things as you go, with it. Just remove the bullshit. It's just when the problem with reason and logic is that it's not very flexible. When you add magic and bullshit and superstition, yes, there are some barriers, but it becomes a lot more flexible. You could play with the conclusions a lot more. So even if you manage to reform it, as long as you have that supernatural elements in it, when you have magic, you don't have to explain shit, right? If you still have that, when the time comes, you could explain genocide away if you want to. This is Shia. Actually, Khomeinism is the best example. For 1400 fucking years, these Shia Muslims believe that Islam should not get into politics until Imam Mahdi comes back. But as soon as they get the power, all of a sudden they realize that no, they were wrong all the time. Yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say that this is a good segue into the next question, which I'm going back to Jim King. Now, and you said, why have most Muslims in the U.S. been defanged? Because they are wealthy and more educated, or because most left to move to the U.S. because they didn't want to live in a theocracy? That's a very good question. It's actually an extremely good question, and it's also complicated. And I think it kind of goes to, for some people, what they see is they see a simple thing of minorities and majorities. Where Muslims are in minority, they tend to do really well, where Muslims are in majority, and they have the chance to rule, as Armin was talking about, like right now with the whole Khomeini example, things get shot to shit. Now, this isn't exactly completely true all the time. So, we've had in the past, at least before the 1970s, you've had situations like, you had the parliamentary democracy in Turkey. If you look at Indonesia some time ago, that's a Muslim majority country. The only country in history that's ever had a state religion, a declared state religion officially of atheism, was Albania, which is also a Muslim majority country. So there are many exceptions to that.
They called it the religion?
Yeah, they said, yeah, it was the enforced belief system. Not enforced. It was the official belief system of the country.
But belief system or religion? They called it a religion?
I don't know if they actually called it a religion, but it was atheism was the official belief system. But you can look it up on Wikipedia.
You can't force people to believe in things that make sense.
I absolutely agree with you. Right. And I think that was wrong too. So I don't think it's a matter simply of majority and minorities. That said, another example of a relatively, like if you go to India, India has the second largest population of Muslims in the world, but that population is only 13% of the entire population of India, which is, a small percentage, but a huge in number. But as far as any international terrorists who are Indian, I haven't heard of any. There are tensions within India between Hindus and Muslims. The Hindus, the nationalist Hindus are actually pretty much, they're learning a lot from the crazy Muslims.
Yeah.
So they tend to, I can't even tell the two apart anymore. But the community there has had a very strong Sufi influence. So there's a regional reason why there's that. Whereas, Pakistani Muslims have had more Arab influence. India has had.
When you're a minority, you play nice, I think.
Well, you do play, and it's not. I think more than a minority, it has to do with pluralism.
No, I mean, you can't say that about India, because India now the Hindus are going Islamic, right?
No, they're not. They're not. That's true, but it's not to the extent that.
Well, give it time. What?
Yeah, well, that's true. You never know. But I think that I think all of these things play together. Another example is if you look at Muslims are minorities in many of the European countries. They're slightly bigger minorities than the U.S. and Canada, but they're minorities in
But they
none.
feel like they're majority when when you're segregated, right? If you feel like the neighborhoods you're in, you feel like a majority. So that's
Yeah,
why they act like a majority, even though they're not a majority.
yeah, and well, all you free market capitalist and libertarian people are going to love this answer that I'm going to about to say, is that when people go to, and I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. When I was in Pakistan, if there's somebody who's running a shop, they still have to pay for all their own health care, the kids' education, and all that stuff. So they're working their asses off, and they have to do that. Now, when they move to England or France, they get social services where they can live in a residence that's secure. They can have education for their kids that's free. They have healthcare that's free. They're getting support, financial support from the government, social assistance. And when they have that, I think a lot of them they do become complacent. They become more ghettoized. They tend to fall into lower socioeconomic class, and they don't really have that much of an identity beyond the fact that they're Muslim or they're brown or they're Pakistani or they're immigrants. On the other hand, like people who come to the U.S., they're not going to have any kind of social assistance. They're gonna have to eventually integrate and assimilate and get their shit together and start making a life for themselves. So, in contrast to the Muslim minorities in European countries, where these social networks, these social safety nets are really strong, in the United States, you have the Muslims tend to be one of the highest that they have tend to have.
Well, there's
Uh,
another reason for that too,
mhm.
because in Canada and United States, they have an ocean between them and Islamic countries. So any person that gets here has to afford a plane ticket. It's
That's
easier
another.
to screen. People need to be able to afford it. But when it comes to Europe, we could get on a boat or hide in a truck, and get from Iran to London in a shady way. And you have a lot of people. It's hard to stop all of them. I mean, the screening process is much easier for Canada and United States. That's why we get their best, and they get everything.
And that's why I'm saying that I think that this is a really good question because it's often answered simplistically.
Mm.
But as Armin has said, yes, that is the geographical factor is massive. The fact that there's a huge ocean on either side of people living in the United States, and they're actually really well cushioned from the rest of the world everywhere, not just Muslim majority countries. So you have that factor. You've got the factor of the political systems, the socioeconomic systems, the social assistance aspect, the capitalistic free market aspect. You've got the minority majority argument. You've got regional influences, like you may have more Sufi influences, which are more peaceful. You may have more sort of Wahhabi Saudi Arab influences that are tend to be more orthodox. So different societies have. There are many different reasons for why the Muslims in the United States are the way that they are. A lot of it also has to do with just the ideology of the U.S. Founding, their basic their constitution that a lot of people have
By the way, we got
a
our
lot of it that relate
second
to.
super chat by
Two super chats?
it
I just
was,
found out what the shit is, and now we have two of them.
yeah. This is our first time getting them, and we're getting them both in one
I
episode.
I'm loving doing this. I'm really
Apostate
enjoying this. But
Apostate Prophet. Thank you so much. Actually, he's a regular here, and he has a great comment. So thank you for your support. That's very sweet. Wow, you
Mhm.
guys are awesome. That's
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks a lot.
yeah.
So, and was there a question associated with it? Or?
No, he just wanted to support us. That's
Thank you, Apostate Prophet. I love that Apostate Prophet. I love that name.
that's
It's just cool. It's
very
fiery.
good. Yeah.
Um. Okay, so now wait. Someone is talking about. So do you have another question? We unfortunately okay. Here's a good question from Moldy Pizza. I'll say this one next. Armin, I just have I had about 90 minutes for this, so I think that we have about 15 minutes, if that's okay.
All right. No more.
For you guys?
Don't send more questions. Let's just finish the questions we have, and then
Yeah. So this question is from Moldy Pizza again. It's like, do you guys know of any portrayals of ex-Muslims in the media besides Aziz Ansari or Kumail Nanjiani playing themselves?
Hmm.
Um, and that's also a very good question. Aziz Ansari, I know that he's an atheist. I don't know if he identifies as an ex-Muslim. I think he's kind of always been secular.
I mean,
Um,
even if you don't identify, if you are an ex-Muslim, you're an ex-Muslim, aren't you? Like,
I guess, well, I mean, that's a question. Like, I don't know him enough to know whether he actually believed at some point or whether he was never
right.
Muslim at all. So, but he is, yeah, his family's, his parents are both religious. There was and the way I found out about this was there was a New York Times article that called him a Muslim, and then he called them and he corrected it and saying that I'm an atheist. So then they issued a correction saying that Aziz Ansari actually identifies as an atheist. So that's
Nice.
um, yeah. So he actually does care about it enough to have done that.
Yeah, that's pretty nice that actually not only he is an atheist, he wanted to make sure that um
Mhm.
that was stated. By the way,
Yeah,
one thing I want to make sure nobody leaves before I mentioned it before. We have a private Facebook group now, closed Facebook group for our patrons.
yeah.
Um, if you
Yes,
didn't,
we do. And
yes,
I have
you
to
need
still
to
get in there. I saw this cool stuff. I haven't had the chance to dive in, but I'm going to.
yes,
So
yes.
I'm really looking
So
forward to it.
if you're a patron, please come join that chat group, and also um, any for our page, we want to have uh, co-hosts, patron co-hosts. So for the which tier was that? The Musad Shu tier and up, I think it was. Let me double check just to make sure I didn't get it wrong. Um, yeah, I think it was the Musad Shu tier and up. Let me just. So if you
Yeah.
is it
So
is that correct? So yeah, if you guys are interested in joining us as a co-host, no, it was the Jew lover, the Jew lover. By the way, the Yasmin came up with these names, so
I
it's
know,
good.
and yeah,
Uh,
you have to remember this is all very well. I guess I don't have to explain
oh,
to all
so Musaj
that.
Shoes tiers and up, they get to their questions will be read first. So that's why we went with the Obey's question and Siva's questions first because they were Musaj shoes. But the Jew lover tier and up, they get to join if they wish. They could join into in some of these Q and A's. They could join me and Ali to answer these questions.
Yeah, and we'll have
So
some of those. So
yeah,
that'll be a lot of fun too. I'm looking forward to that.
right.
Um, but yeah, to answer this question about the are there other ex-Muslims in the media? So all what I'm going to say is that I know that there are not necessarily in the U.S. media, but in media around the world. I actually know a lot of them. They're mostly closeted. They don't speak out in the open. I have when I was writing my book, and I've mentioned this previously too. I received correspondence from politicians, journalists, media personalities, even celebrities in some Muslim majority countries who wanted me to address this or that or something in the book and to talk about it. So they do feel very strongly about this. They are very aware that they can't talk about it where they are. Specifically, I mean, especially because they have platforms. But yeah, there are a lot more ex-Muslims out there than you guys think. Um, Many of them used to be a lot more vocal, and this is one of the other sort of unfortunate things is that since this whole rise of the alt right and the rise of Trumpism and everything, many of them have kind of, I guess, backed off of a lot of their criticism of Islam or their sort of ex-Muslim advocacy in a way, even if it was from the closet advocacy. And I've spoken to some of them about it, and at least one of them referenced the ban. They're like, I live in a country where he's banning us, and now the president of the U.S. is actually banning people like me, even though I would be potentially an ally for everybody over there. But there's loads of people like me who are being banned here too. So there are. I mean, that seems to be common sentiment among them as well. So there are a lot of complicated factors that are being played out. But there are definitely a lot more ex-Muslims out there than you think. Okay.
By the way, this last question about Saudi Arabia, the current situation in Saudi Arabia, I think we need to do a full episode on that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think we should. And so, who said this? It was A. Sarkis.
Mm.
Um, A. Sarkis, like, thank you for the question. I think it's really good, and I think we will do a future episode on this. Um, uh, we have my approach to this, just to give a quick headline, is that Armin and I are in agreement with this guy, this MBS guy, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, who's pretty much running things
No, not we're
single-handedly
not
there.
in. No, we're in agreement. Okay, so
No,
we're
no,
not.
we're
Okay,
agreement
just
on what.
we're in agreement about him, but we're not in an agreement with him. Just to
No,
be
no, no.
clear,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
we
We're not
hate
agreeing.
him.
So,
Do we
so,
agree? Do you hate him? I hate him.
so here's what I was gonna say. I said that we were both in agreement. Armin and I, both of us, are in agreement with each other that the situation in Yemen is completely indefensible, completely inexcusable, and the fact that he's aggravated it and he's carrying it on is unfortunately discrediting pretty much all the other quote unquote good stuff he's doing.
It's not even this. The other stuff are cover for the stuff that he's doing.
Yeah. So, on the other hand, the people, and I actually correspond with a lot of people in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, by the way, people don't know what MBS means.
Oh, MBS is Mohammed bin Salman. He is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia right now. His father is the King Salman, the king, and he's really old and senile and sick. So, pretty much, this kid is 32 years old. He's a crown prince. He's going to
Let's do a
become
full
king.
episode on him.
Yeah, yeah. So he's going to be, and he is pretty much made a grab for power by taking full control, imprisoning a lot of the other foreign, it's a crackdown on corruption, is what he says. But then on the other, he also
crackdown, quote unquote. By the way,
yeah.
I'm doing air quotes, but
we'll do an episode on that.
Yeah, we do an episode. Before we go, I also wanted to mention, people reminded me that Apostate Prophet has a great YouTube channel as well. So we should anybody here that want to check that out.
Apostate Prophet's YouTube channel. Check it out, everybody.
Oh, so by the way, the question about MBS was a joke. He apparently, James knew already what it means, but some people, I think it's a good question because a lot of listeners might not. So yeah, so
I think let's save it for that episode.
Yes.
I think suffice it to say that we think he's doing a lot of horrible things, but I'd also like to mention that a lot of people that I correspond with in Saudi Arabia, many of them probably going to listen to this, they have expressed optimism. Obviously, they're in a country that's very insular and very closed, and
they shouldn't. Okay, if you. Yeah, okay. I know it's easier for us to say because it's not our lives that are becoming better by his policies. So maybe if I was living in Saudi Arabia and all of a sudden he does things that makes our lives a little bit more, a little bit more free.
I think that's what's happening.
It might be more biased, but come on, guys.
But I also have to mention,
but given the amount of crimes that this guy has committed in Yemen, he has to cure cancer for any of us to be even remotely close to the amount of misery that this motherfucker
and
has.
I guess that's the argument, is that if he does truly change Saudi Arabia drastically to the extent, would that be the equivalent of, in a way, curing a metaphorical cancer?
No, the amount, I mean, I don't think he would. The amount of suffering that this one person has caused, not that other countries are not responsible, right? Iran is responsible, United States is responsible, a lot of European countries are responsible. The Houthis themselves are responsible, but it wouldn't. But still, I think it wouldn't happen without this crown prince, and there's nothing I can think of that he could do for any of this to be excusable. And any quote, some people say, why can't you condemn that and also see the good things at the same time? The problem is, people say that this is whataboutism, and I'm like, no, it's not whataboutism, because it's the same motherfucker. It's not like I'm saying, like, I'm pointing at a different person. It's not whataboutism if the source is the same person. One, and second of all, the good stuff are cover. Every time he wants to go arrest a whole, even in fucking Saudi Arabia, the amount of political arrests and human rights arrests have increased, right? But he wants to he knows how to distract the media whenever he does all this fucking
Yeah, he does, and there's always a but anytime you say something. So when I say that, there are people I'm corresponding with who are optimistic about it, then I also say, but my really good friend Raif Badawi is still in prison for proposing the exact same stuff this guy's actually doing now. What did Raif talk about? He talked about letting women vote. He talked about women being able to drive. He talked about more sort of movie theaters and letting people make their own decisions, allowing women to soccer stadiums. All of the same stuff that this guy's now doing is what Raif wrote about, and that's the reason that they flogged him and threw him in jail. And he is still in jail. And Mohammed bin Salman he was asked about releasing human rights activists, and he said, no, our law is different. The way that we do things here is different. So there is always a but with this guy. I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm waiting and watching. Let's do one more question, Armin, and then I'll call it a night. Thank you. This has been like, I'm over this. This is way more stuff than I thought we'd have here. So I'm just super. This is a lot. This is just fantastic. I'm really glad that it's happening. And sorry, one last thing I wanted to say. James Gross is saying Saudis allowing women into the army now was so progressive, and I completely get that.
I know, but remember that's
no, he's saying it sarcastically.
I know, but even if he wasn't saying it sarcastically, right?
Yeah.
So let's say so people are like, oh wow, finally, good job, like you're so behind. But let's say some people say, well, at least it's progress. I don't even buy that line that at least it's progress, because that's a reaction to him actually kicking a whole bunch of people out. Like he did another thing at the same time. He's shaking up the military.
What I was going to do is
he knows that stuff about women is get attention in the media. So he's like,
internationally,
how could we completely change the military so that I have full control of the military, but also not
and
get media cover it? Let's let women in the military. I bet you that's what people are going to cover.
But what I was going to say in response to relating to James Gross's comment about this, the women was so progressive thing, is that these two things in the world, one is the Pope and one is Saudi Arabia. Anytime they do something that the rest of us agreed on decades ago, right, we celebrate. Like the Pope's like, oh, condoms are okay, maybe. And then suddenly we're like, what a progressive guy. It's amazing. The bar is so low for these two entities in the world, right? It's amazing. It's amazing whenever the Pope says something that about gay rights or about women's rights that, we've had, I don't know, for decades we've been okay with it. And if anybody else said it, you just be like, what's wrong with you? Like we settled that. When the Pope says it, when the Saudis do it, we just elevate them as if they're, just
as if they're like,
they deserve the Nobel Prize.
Atheists are not evil, and we're like, oh my God, this is our moral guide. Look at how progressive this is. Like, okay, congratulations for thinking that people that don't agree with you are not demons.
I know, and that's why it was driving me crazy when the Pope and Raif Badawi were both nominated for the Nobel Prize. Neither one.
By the way, he never said that they will get. I think there's two terms in Christianity that are completely different, and people confuse them. And I think I forgot them right now. But what the term that he used does not suggest that the atheists could go to heaven. He used a different term. There's two. Okay. One of them is salvation. The other one is something else.
I don't think it matters to atheists in general.
No, I know, but other people were so shocked that he even said something that maybe atheists will go to heaven. No, he never suggested that.
I think he was saying something. Even atheists can get to heaven if.
No, he didn't say. No. He said something else that people confuse with salvation, but it wasn't that. So he never said that they can go to heaven.
Okay. So yeah, let's do one more question. Let's get out of here.
All right, good.
Got one?
Greetings from Syria. Thanks for replying to my question. Thanks, I appreciate that. No, I guess
greetings from Syria.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hi, Trevor. Greetings from Syria. Oh, I don't know if you saw when we talked. Oh, so here's another question. How come Faisal and Yasmin left? So they're both very busy. Faisal is busy with his own projects, and Yasmin is really busy with life. And she wants to focus on her book and her own little amazing project when it comes to reaching out to ex-Muslims, and trying to go look at her project, and you can support that. She's trying to provide emotional support for ex-Muslims that are in,
Yeah, she's hooking them up with like therapists and ex-Muslims who need psychological support,
right.
hooking them up with actual therapists who can help
But
help them.
and also she's publishing her book with Atheist
With
Republic.
Atheist Republic. So yeah, anyway, so Yaz and Armin are actually still working together in that sense, that her book, which is going to be called From Al Qaeda to Atheism,
Yes,
is
look
going
that
to
up.
be put out by and I saw some of the cover designs
Yes,
that you guys put out, and they're just, it looks beautiful. Like just a book. I can't wait till it comes out. So
yes,
um you know, Yaz, if you're listening, I mean, well, she knows, still love her, and we are going to keep on trying to. And
yeah.
we've talked about this, like maybe if she comes back as a guest host from time to time.
I think we're gonna once her book is out, we're gonna bring her as a guest to talk about it, and bring her as a guest. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
would be great.
So we'll do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's this is just something that we are excited about it. I mean, this is obviously, it's very different from the way that the podcast was before. There were good things about that. I think there are a lot of really good things. I've heard amazing feedback about what it's like right now with the secular jihadists for Muslim enlightenment. Just the fact that, I mean, there are two of us, and even though, and it's still, we can really dive into topics with a lot of depth. We can get into conversations and really explore things a lot more. There are pluses and minuses to each format, but it has been, I think, so far, we've been actually very, very encouraged with how things have been going. One more question that I got, Armin, really quick one, is what is your favorite secular jihadist episode?
Mm.
It's gonna be a tough one. Or even if you have like a top three, but you got to do quick.
Well, I mean, I like the one with Dave Rubin just because I got so much compliments on it.
Yeah, well, like not from Ruben fans though,
No,
but
not
I
from Rubin.
I, I, I like that episode too. I think that Armin, I think there are a lot of questions people wanted to somebody to ask Dave, and Armin, you kind of did that. Um, and overall, it was a really good episode. We also talked about that we were very friendly with him too, and so on.
But we didn't go easy.
Yeah.
But there's a question for you too, Ali. Are you blonde infidel is asking? Are you going to reschedule your trip to New Zealand?
The hope is to do that. So the way that this was that this was being organized. It was a trip that Majid Nawaz and I and Yasmin Mohammed were going to go on. Yasmin eventually had to pull out for the same reason that she had to, focus on her book and everything. But later on, just became an issue, and it was associated with the release of the movie Islam and the Future of Tolerance, which, uh, you know, I don't know exactly what the scheduling is, but at some point we are going to make a trip to New Zealand. In the meantime, just upcoming things. April, the Dutch translation of The Atheist Muslim just launched in the Netherlands. So if you're in the Netherlands, I'm going to be there doing 3 events between April 15th and April 20th. So, I'll be in Amsterdam and a couple other cities. I will also be, when I come back on April 29th, I'll be at the Harvard Humanist Hub for a Muslimish event. And in May, I'm going to go to Calgary, to here in Canada, in Alberta, to do the secular conference there. That's organized by Nathan Phelps, who is it's the son of Fred Phelps, the Westboro Baptist Church organizer, and he's now a huge LGBT activist and an atheist activist. So it's one of my favorite conferences as well, and I really like going there to speak. So that's what's on the horizon soon. Armin, if you have anything you want to talk
I
about?
have something coming up, but it hasn't been announced yet, so I don't know if I am allowed
Oh,
to
then
say it.
yeah, then wait for it and announce
Yeah.
it in a later episode.
But just if any of our patrons that are listening, if you haven't received the link to that closed private Facebook group, message us on Patreon. Say for the link, I'll resend it to you. It should be in your emails. But if you're a new patron and you didn't receive it when we posted it out, go message us. That's a very fun group. We have the same kind of discussions over there with each other in private. So join there. Anyways, Ali, I know you have to go, so I'm not gonna hold you. By the way, guys, in the live chat, you guys are awesome. Beach is always there. He's what Beach is one of our greatest. Oh, I pulled my headphone. One of our greatest followers is always in the live chat. He's also comes in the Atheist Republic live chats as well. So
Vlog. I think that's a good idea, Marla.
who?
Yeah, I might do that. A vlog. Someone suggested a vlog. I guess that's a video blog, right? So
Well,
I have to learn all this stuff. I'm not
we're
very good
doing
at it.
that in the private Facebook group.
Yeah.
I have already posted 3 videos of myself asking you guys are your opinions there, and I
Yeah.
posted there all the time. So come join there.
Yeah.
Shabbat shalom. Oh,
And I also have to say that when we talk about the favorite secular jihadist episode, I think I liked a lot of them. Like I love the one we had with Rana. That was our very third episode that we ever did. But I have to say that the one I've enjoyed most recently was with Tanya Joya, and
oh yeah, that was one.
she's the ex-wife of the ISIS commander Yahya al-Bahrumi, and that was just
That was crazy.
jaw-dropping 2 hours, and it was incredible. It's our most recent episode, so do check that out. Upcoming, we have an episode. We've got a great episode with David Silverman. We had an amazing conversation, especially about him saying that Judaism is not a culture and not an ethnicity; it's just a religion, and that's why he rejects the term Jew, even though he's technically Jewish.
He thinks atheist Jews are an oxymoron.
An oxymoron. And plus a whole bunch of other things. We also have an episode coming up with Ibrahim Abdullah, who is a co-founder of Muslimish, and he's a really, really fascinating character. And we had a pretty long debate on what the word Muslim means, and that got a little heated. So you'll enjoy that.
Some of our patrons were saying we got in too much. One of our patrons said that we got too much in semantics, but then we talked about it in the private group. Why that was important. But that was an interesting discussion as well.
So I noticed. I was listening because what I do is I try to find nice clips in each of these episodes. So I was actually listening to that the one we had with Ibrahim, and what I think the debate part of it is fine. I think what happened is that after a while we repeated everything we said 3 times. So what I'm going to try to do is if I notice that happening, then I'm just going to be the bad guy.
Right.
And kind of, okay, guys, you said this, you said we've heard both sides. We agree to disagree. Let's move on to the next topic. So
but when you respond to something and then somebody just repeat what they said, you just feel like, well, they didn't listen to your response.
But I think
so. You repeat your response. That's why that happened.
I know. And so it keeps going in circles, and I think we don't realize that when we do it. Right. I also noticed that I think some people said that at the end of the Tanya Joy episode, there was a lot of crosstalk, and we were kind of because I guess we were really excited and we had so many questions, and I listened to that over, and I think that there's some basis to that, and even though it still sounded like a great conversation,
that we interrupted her. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, towards the end, I think. When we were
nobody complains when we interrupt other men. They only complain they only come and tell us that we interrupted our guests.
No, but in this case, I think it was more than just a woman. It was the fact that I think she was saying certain things, and I'd jump in with a question, you jump in with a question.
Yeah, because we were running out of time, and we looked at the list of our questions, and holy shit, we're running out of time, and I have 20 more questions left. So
at the end, yeah. So this guy's again, I'm talking about this. Because I know I'm very confident that we have a fantastic podcast. I've heard that everywhere, and I'm very happy about it. But I think that there's always room for improvement. So when I get feedback like this, and when Armin gets feedback like this, it's great.
Yeah, it's helpful.
It just makes us more. It just helps us produce a better show for you guys. So thank you. And we have another episode with Brian Earp, who's actually a lot of people have asked me about this. He's an academic who writes a lot about circumcision and the ethics around male circumcision, as well as just infant circumcision, infant mutilation in general. So we've been asked a while by several people about having an episode about circumcision. So we are going to have an expert on and talk about that.
Go harass people on Twitter, people that you want on our if you're listening to this, people that you want to be on our show. We don't know if we should ask them or not. Just go on Twitter and tag them and ask them if they would come on our show, and if we notice that they are say yes or something, then we might invite them. So if you want somebody really uh, to see somebody in our show, and if we notice it's a really good guest, and you tag reply to them or say something to them, and you tag Secular Jihadist, I'll retweet you on Secular Jihadist, Atheist Republic, and my own personal account, so that person notices that you're tag that you're asking them if they come on our show. So go do that. That would be very helpful. Then we know who's actually willing to come on our show.
Yeah, moldy pizza. You said again, Graham would be great. Graham actually did listen to the Tanya episode because I mean I was
Oh
introduced
yeah.
to Tanya through Graham, and he listened to it and he enjoyed it and he thought it was very amusing. He tweeted me about it as well. So
Oh, and
that was awesome, and I'm glad. So I'll see if we can try and get him on.
I'm also in talk with some really conservative Muslims.
Who we will have on the show too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Some of them are not very. They might be doubtful what our intentions are. So I'm trying to show them our discussions with other conservative Muslims that it wasn't like a trap, or like we didn't like uh like bring them in. Like we challenge them, of course, but we don't belittle them or insult them. It's not that kind of a, you know, they're not going to have a really bad time, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
So
that's one thing we're doing actually this year is we're going to start because the with ex-Muslims and I think even with a lot of the sort of reform activists, you know, the main audience is really a non-Muslim audience, and what we want to do is we already have some guests, Muslim guests who are scheduled, so we're going to start opening up the dialogue with believers and with Muslims of all tiers, you know, liberal, conservatives, and so on. So watch out for that too. I think that's the next step here.
yeah.
And you mentioned that I think when Sarah Hader was on.
Yeah, I'm
That
saying
is really
every
nice.
Muslim that we atheists and ex-Muslims invite on the show, not every, or just moderates or reformists. Like we need to get some serious Muslims on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end with this thing from Hans Holtz. Jesus is my Lord, and I'm his royal servant.
What?
Good for you.
I think
Hans
it's a
Holtz.
joke. Isn't it a joke? I
I
think
think
it's
so.
a joke.
He also
Trump
wrote
is
Trump
our
is our
president.
president and last savior.
I
Yeah.
think he's joking.
So let's end on that note.
All right.
This is cool.
All right.
So guys, thank you very much. This is awesome. Happy Friday night. Have a great fucking weekend. And you
Oh
know,
yeah,
enjoy yourself
he was joking. I knew it.
and enjoy the Oscars on Sunday.
All right.
I've got all my bets on. Anyway, I'd like to
Oh,
see Daniel Day-Lewis win again. I don't think he will. I think Gary Oldman's going to win it for playing
oh,
Winston Churchill.
Adrian. I know Adrian. I met Adrian. Hi, Adrian. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. So sorry. Go. I interrupted you. Go on.
I was just talking about the Oscars. So anyway, we're gonna go. You're making it really hard for me to go.
Yes.
Go.
All right, guys. Thank you in the live chat. We love you. And
Bye.
we'll do this more often. Bye.